They cursed him to his face, never realizing they were talking to the man who built the very place they were standing in. That was the moment Marcus Reed understood. Some places you think you still belong to, no longer belong to you at all. Marcus, 38, is the CEO and founder of Mama Lou's Soul Kitchen, a restaurant named after the grandmother who raised him on boiled bean water, scraps of bread, and unshakable resilience. Mama Lou's used to be the kind of place where people sat down, not because they had money, but because they were treated like they mattered. It wasn't just a restaurant. It had a soul. But for nearly a year, Marcus hadn't set foot inside. Board meetings, vendor calls, expansion plans. He thought keeping the stove hot and payroll flowing was enough to preserve a culture. Until the anonymous reviews started coming in. Staff look at poor folks like they're beggars. Colder than a hospital. Nobody even says hi anymore. At first, he ignored them. Then came one post that hit harder than the rest. Mama Lou's used to heal you. Now it just makes you feel judged. Marcus felt a chill creep down his spine. Something was rotting from the inside, and he knew he'd never find out what it was if he walked in wearing the title of owner. So that morning, he threw on a faded jacket, pulled a hood over his head, and walked back into the place. Not to inspect, but to do something few have the courage to do. Disappear, just long enough to finally see the truth. Marcus pushed the door open right at the lunch rush. Heat from the kitchen rolled out, laced with the smell of fried catfish, cracked black pepper, and sweet, tangy sauce. Just like the old days. But what stopped him wasn't the smell. It was the air. Cold, sluggish, completely unfamiliar. He tugged his hoodie lower, eyes scanning the room. No one looked up. No welcoming glance. Not even the bare minimum of a nod. Behind the register stood Zaya, popping gum like the world owed her something. Next to her, Troy, tall, skinny, checked out, was buried in his phone, only glancing at customers with a half smirk that felt more like mockery. Marcus stood there, 1 minute, then 2, then 4. He said nothing. He didn't need to be recognized, but the sting of invisibility burned like salt on an old wound. Finally, Zaya mumbled without even lifting her head. Next. Marcus stepped forward, voice calm, quiet. I'll have the fried fish. With beans. No eye contact, no reaction. Just a flat response. Cash or card. Say it quick. I got people waiting. Marcus reached for his wallet, not because he was shocked, but because something inside him, the part that still believed this place had heart, just crumbled. In the very restaurant he had built with his own 2 hands, and the memory of a grandmother who taught him to cook with love. Today, he was treated no better than a beggar who wandered in off the street. And the part that cut the deepest, not a single one of them thought anything was wrong. Marcus stepped back toward a corner near the counter, receipt clenched lightly in his hand, eyes drifting like any walk-in customer waiting on takeout. No one noticed him, and then he heard it. Troy glanced his way, smirked, leaned in toward Zaya, and muttered, just low enough to sound secret, just loud enough to reach Marcus. These random black dudes showing up at this hour, probably fresh out of lockup. Eat and dip. Zaya scoffed, loud, sharp, careless. Ever since they started hiring from the shelter, this place has turned into a dump. Marcus didn't move, didn't turn, didn't flinch. But inside, his heart skipped. He had built this place for people like that, for the ones who had nowhere else to go, the ones who just needed a meal, without judgment. And now, the very people wearing shirts that said Mama Lou's were treating customers like garbage. He swallowed hard. He thought he'd heard enough. But the final blow, was the one that turned his chest to ice. The owner? He's black, probably off somewhere sipping lattes. Who cares? Zaya's voice was sharp, brittle, like a shard of glass thrown across the floor. A line hurled into the air with no care who caught it. Marcus closed his eyes, not out of rage, but because he saw it clearly now. They weren't just insulting him. They were trampling the soul of this place, a place that was once home for the forgotten, a dream built from faith, sweat, and dignity, now crushed beneath apathy, prejudice, and ungratefulness. And the worst part? They said it so easily, like they'd done it 100 times before. Marcus walked out of the restaurant. He didn't look back. He didn't take the food. No one called after him. No one noticed. The door shut behind him, a soft, final period, at the end of a sentence no one bothered to read. Under the buzz of midday traffic and sunlight bouncing off windshields, he walked slowly toward his old SUV, parked under the shade of a tree. The receipt was still in his hand, climbed into the driver's seat, but didn't turn the key. It lay still in his palm, as still as he was. A breeze slipped through the cracked window, carrying the scent of frying oil and kitchen smoke. The same smell that once brought him back to childhood, to the little kitchen where Mama Lou flipped cornbread while telling stories of a time when love fed more than hunger. Now that same scent made his stomach twist, not from hunger, but from loss. Marcus sat motionless, eyes fixed on the steering wheel. And in that silence, he finally heard what the whole afternoon had been screaming in his face. It's not that they don't know who I am. It's that they don't care. He used to think distance was temporary, that as long as the books balanced, the stove stayed hot, and the brand stayed alive, everything else would hold. But it didn't. He had built something with soul, then turned his back and left it to rot. No one tore it down. It just died because he wasn't there to keep it alive. And maybe that's the greatest sin a man can commit, to build something in the name of family and then abandon it like a stranger. Marcus didn't start the engine. Instead of leaving, he quietly opened the door, walked around to the narrow alley behind the restaurant, where there were no cameras, no eyes to protect anyone's pride, just a rusted steel door, stained and weathered, once used for late-night deliveries. He stopped a few steps away, hands in his pockets, leaning back against a cracked brick wall. A small window above the door was slightly ajar. Laughter spilled out, loud and sharp. Troy's voice. Bet the old man's dead. And if he ain't, he's probably off counting cash somewhere. Doesn't give a damn about us. The laughter spread like oil, laced with poison. Zaya chimed in, without hesitation. I call him the arrogant ghost. His face is plastered huge on the wall, but no one's ever seen him in real life. Marcus closed his eyes, not out of anger, out of shame. Shame for himself, for once believing that loyalty could survive on nothing more than paychecks sent on time. He was about to walk away when another voice cut through, low, gravelly, but steady. He started with a kitchen made of bricks and a broken oven. Don't forget that. Mallet, the head chef, the last man standing from the early days, a man who'd done time and been pulled back from the edge by Mama Lou's. Marcus stayed frozen, his chest tightened. Amid all the noise, the ingratitude, the apathy, there was still a single flame holding on. But that only made one thing clearer. That flame was flickering, tossed around in a storm of neglect. And if Marcus didn't come back, really come back, everything would burn to ash. Marcus left the alley behind the restaurant in silence. What he'd just heard needed no interpretation. It was clear, too clear, and far too real. He walked briskly, didn't look back, got in the car. And this time, he turned the key. But he didn't drive home. He needed space, not to stew in anger, but to prepare. That evening, in a modest hotel on the edge of Marietta, Marcus sat alone at a corner table. No laptop, no assistant, no management tools, just a worn-out notebook and a silver pen with the paint peeling off. He wrote down everything still echoing in his mind. Troy's laughter, Zaya's face when she said dump, Malik's eyes when he spoke of the brick stove, and the blank stares of the customers. Like every single one of them was just there to eat and leave. No connection, no presence, no belonging. He wrote slowly, methodically, as if each sentence was evidence for a trial happening tomorrow. 9 a.m. He pulled out his phone, opened the staff group chat, and typed a single cold message. Full staff meeting, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Mandatory. No greeting, no emoji, no explanation. Just a knock made of steel. Cold enough to stop everyone in their tracks. Not to punish, but to begin. The next morning, at exactly 8:59 a.m., Marcus Reed pushed open the doors of Mama Lou's. No hoodie, no worn-out jacket. Today, he wore a charcoal gray blazer, a white shirt with the top 2 buttons undone, and dark denim jeans. He looked like himself again, or more precisely, like the portrait hanging on the wall behind the front counter. The silence inside the restaurant thickened instantly. Every pair of eyes turned toward him. Some froze mid-step. Malik gave a quiet nod. Wordless, but warm. Zaya. Her face drained of color, like someone had just pulled the blood out of her veins. Troy leaned against the wall, his fists clenched, but not enough to hide the panic in his eyes. Marcus didn't speak right away. He walked slowly to the counter, stopping at the exact spot he'd stood the day before. Then he turned around, facing everyone. His voice was low, clear, not angry, just honest. Yesterday I stood right here. Not as Marcus Reed, but as a stranger. He locked eyes with Troy, then Zaya. I heard everything. What you said about our customers, that I'm some arrogant ghost, that I'm dead. I'm not dead, but I have been absent. And you were right, I wasn't here. But that doesn't give you the right to lose respect for people. He paused, let the silence stretch, then finished with a line colder than steel. You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected the name on that sign. And worse, you disrespected the very people this place was built to serve. The air inside the restaurant hung heavy after every word Marcus spoke. No one moved. No one dared meet another's eyes. Marcus looked around, slowly. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't scold. But each word landed like a stone, dropped into the stillness. I'm not firing anyone today. His gaze passed over Zaya, then Troy, and finally stopped at Charisse, who stood wringing her apron in her hands. I don't need to, because starting tomorrow, every action, every look, every word will tell me exactly what you've decided this place means to you. A long pause followed, thick, unyielding, and just then, the door swung open. Isaiah stepped inside, 19 years old, newly hired through the shelter program. Hair still damp, old hoodie, backpack slung awkwardly from a fraying strap. He lifted his head, uncertain, his eyes scanning the room now frozen on him. Zaya turned away instantly, eyes downcast. Troy backed up a full step, avoiding his gaze. Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to, because in that moment, Malik stepped out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel, voice deep and warm. Welcome back, Isaiah. Isaiah hesitated for a beat, then smiled, just a little, but real. No one else spoke. No one needed to, because in that one quiet second, Marcus knew the seed was still there. And the soil, however dry, could still come back to life if someone was willing to plant again. That day, the restaurant opened right on time. No one quit. But no one joked around either. The tension from the meeting had faded, but a cautious stillness still lingered, like everyone was relearning how to move through an old room, a place that used to feel familiar, but now had to be approached with care and kindness. Zaya stood a little straighter than usual. Her mouth hadn't quite remembered how to smile, but at least she started to speak. A woman paid in cash. Zaya took the receipt and quietly said, "Thank you." Software awkward, a little forced, but real. That thank you dropped like the first bead of water hitting dry, cracked earth. Troy was different. Still cold, still closed off, but quieter. No sarcastic comments, no sideways glares at customers. He just worked. In silence. Marcus didn't interfere. He didn't stand over anyone's shoulder, didn't tap his fingers on the counter, didn't issue commands. He just sat at his usual table near the window, where sunlight cut across the glass, casting a long beam across the worn wood surface. In his hands was a notebook, sometimes open, sometimes closed. His eyes followed each small gesture, not to control, but to understand. Because now, more than ever, he knew the truth. Culture can't be commanded. It has to be revived, bit by bit, day by day. Like a tree left dry too long, it needs watering, with attention, with kindness, with presence that means something. The next afternoon, as the last wave of customers trickled out, Marcus stepped out from the small office behind the kitchen. In his hands were 2 folders, bound together with a simple length of twine. No leather, no glossy covers, no decoration. He placed them on the counter, right where, just days ago, Zaya had been chewing gum and judging customers like she was reading a stock chart. His voice rang out, calm, steady, and clear. "I brought 2 documents." The whole room turned. A chef paused mid-slice. A server froze, still holding a damp cloth. "One's for staying, one's for walking away." Marcus untied the string. "If you sign this one, you're choosing to stay. You're choosing to believe Mama Lou's is worth showing up for. Not just for a paycheck, but to keep its spirit alive." He lifted the second folder. "This one is for anyone who chooses to leave. No judgment, no questions, 2 weeks' pay, a letter of recommendation. I stand by my word. But if you stay, starting tomorrow, no more pretending, no more halfway. You're either all in, or you walk out honest." He stepped back, didn't force a hand, didn't call names, but his words. They settled like a mirror in the middle of the room. One that made everyone look, made everyone ask, "Who am I in this place?" In that moment, Marcus was no longer the owner. He became the gatekeeper, not holding anyone back, but not letting anyone through unless they carried real, no one touched the 2 folders on the counter. Everyone did their job, but their eyes kept drifting toward that spot, as if the papers themselves carried a question no one wanted to answer. Around 3 p.m., Zaya took off her apron, folded it neatly, and walked straight to the counter. No detours, no pretend hesitation. She picked up a pen and signed the second document, the one for those who chose to leave. She set the pen down and turned to Marcus. Her voice wasn't regretful. It wasn't bitter, just honest. "I'm not kind enough for this place, and I think I never really tried to be." Marcus nodded. No sermon, no attempt to convince her. Just one sentence. "Thank you for the truth." Not everyone who walks away is a failure. Sometimes, those who leave because they've seen themselves clearly. That's the first sign of growth. Zaya walked out of Mama Lou's like a gust of wind that had found its end. She didn't look back, but this time she closed the door softly. Near 6 p.m., with the restaurant winding down, Troy finally emerged, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, eyes avoiding contact. He walked over to Marcus's table, reached, hesitantly, for the remaining folder, the one for those who chose to stay. He signed his name. No excuses, no blame, just a single line, quiet and true. I was wrong. I want to fix it. Marcus didn't smile, but he nodded. And for the first time, Troy lowered his head. Not out of fear, but because he understood he had to start over from the lowest place a man can begin. Kindness. The afternoon moved slowly, as if even time had paused to see what Mama Lou's would become next. The air inside the restaurant no longer felt heavy. It wasn't joyful, not yet, but it was lighter. Customers lingered a little longer. "Thank you," was said with sincerity. A child banged their hands on the table, not out of anger, but joy. From the kitchen came the sound of rhythm again, not rushed, but steady. Marcus sat at his usual corner table beside the window. A warm cup of black coffee rested in his hand. He wasn't writing. He wasn't watching anyone anymore. For the first time in months, he was simply present, fully, truly present. Charisse, the young server who once studied culinary arts, walked over with a folded slip of paper in her hand. "A guest left this on table 3, she said softly, placing it in front of him before quietly walking away. Marcus opened it. The handwriting was crooked, probably someone older. No name, no return address, just one short line. "I used to think Mama Lou's had lost its soul, but today I saw her smile again, in the eyes of your staff." Marcus didn't smile. He just breathed in, deep, then folded the note again, slowly, as if wrapping a keepsake too valuable to rush. He didn't put it in his chest pocket. He slid it carefully into his back pocket, pressed close against him, so that every time he sat down, he'd feel it there. Not to show off, but to remember. Because some thank yous don't need to be spoken aloud. They just need to be carried with you. Always. Night had fully fallen. The restaurant had closed over 30 minutes ago, but Marcus still stood there, hands in his pockets, leaning quietly against the old brick wall beside the front door. Above him, the Mama Lou's Soul Kitchen sign glowed in its familiar hues of green and gold, except for one corner on the left, where the light flickered like a weak heartbeat, pulsing off rhythm. Marcus looked up. That flicker used to bother him. A simple flaw, easy to fix. Just call the guy, swap the bulb, done. But tonight, he didn't want it fixed, because somehow that broken light felt more honest than any perfect flow. It reminded him, nothing, not even culture, stands on its own without care. From inside, a soft burst of laughter echoed. Reggie was telling a story to Isaiah and Charisse. Little Tiana hummed an old tune as she wiped down the tables. The air wasn't perfect, but it was warm. It had soul. Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled note, the handwritten message left by a nameless guest. He read it one more time. "Today I saw her smile again, in the eyes of your staff." He folded it carefully this time, more gently, and slipped it into his leather wallet, tucking it right behind an old photo of Mama Lou, the woman with steely eyes and a soft smile. Her voice echoed in his mind, just like it did all those years ago. "A place not fed by love won't survive on a menu, baby." He whispered, "I get it now, Grandma." Marcus turned, pushed the door open, and stepped back inside, not to inspect, but to be present, truly present. because now he understood. Culture needs tending, respect needs reminders, and hope needs a place to grow, not once, but every day. And if this story stirred something deep inside you, then maybe you have a Mama Lou of your own. Don't let the soul of that place quietly slip away. Go back. Don't fix the sign. Fix the fire inside.